Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. My name is Tony Rose Deanna, and they, them pronouns, a designated hype person here at MCP. And I am joined today by Joseph Lombardi, a secondary mathematics teacher and adjunct professor of mathematics. Welcome, Joey.
Thank you, TR. It's so great to be here with you. There's a lot of moving parts here. What I'm really trying to get at is that they are working through these tasks that help them really construct their own understanding of concepts. And then and while they're doing these tasks, they're in random groups and they're working at the vertical non-permanent surfaces. And then after, the 15, 20 minutes of thinking occurs for students, there's the consolidation component. And the consolidation component is really the last phase of a building thinking classrooms activity where students as a class really goes through a note guide that they construct pretty much from their own understanding of concepts. It looks different in every class. Dr. Lillidahl does a really nice job of providing templates in his book about the different uses of notes in a thinking classroom. But what's quite different about these is that instead of telling students to focus on this concept, focus on this idea, you give them more of an open-ended note guide to follow. And they're able to add in what they would like to choose, and then that gets added to the entire classroom. Students are fine with the you-tries. They're comfortable because they just watch their teacher do it on their own. But the moment you put a new problem in front of them, they're completely like, no. And it's simply because math is graded in a very narrow way. They're very used to, kind of receiving negative feedback for showing their thinking. And in a way, they're afraid to show their thinking. And what the power of the vertical non-permanent surface does is they show their thinking with a marker very quickly, and then it's erased. If they don't like an idea, they can take it away immediately. So it takes away that fear of taking risks. And I think that's essential in mathematics, and I think that's essential in every course. I've seen folks work at vertical non-permanent surfaces in other courses, and I think, again, that idea of helping students think through a task rather than passively intake information inevitably leads to a stronger conceptual understanding on part of the students. Now, Dr. Lillidahl is also aware that the book is named Building Thinking Classrooms for Mathematics, and then like a K-12, I need the title in front of me, but what they did was actually created a book that is focused on how a thinking classroom can be used in other disciplines. So on top of the Building Thinking Classrooms book, there's actually a supplemental resource on how this model can be tailored to different disciplines. And on top of that, kind of like Modern Classroom, there's Facebook groups, there's community circles that folks can join. And I think it, again, really centers around having that desire and interest to provide your students with the best opportunity possible to achieve the level of understanding that we're hoping to accomplish. I think specifically one of the biggest reasons I use the model is because I find that the modeling standards and the Common Core state standards are somewhat challenging to address. There's a lot of modeling tasks that are built into K-12 curricular materials across the country. And specifically illustrative mathematics does a very good job of providing those discovery-based exercises and really emphasizing those modeling standards. But other curricular materials don't. They tend to use other principles that kind of mirror what I might have seen in my own secondary career. And so I think, again, it's really that interest and desire that stems from teachers to then not only try methods on their own, but then seek out these additional supplemental resources that have been curated over time to help adapt this thinking classroom into other classes. I consider doing mathematics as exploring the concept, building the concept from scratch, creating your own understanding of it that you can taking these skills that, it's okay to not get the correct answer every time. That's part of the process of learning. And all of those skills transfer into all other disciplines and any position you ever take, and especially in a math class on an exam. Because a lot of exams, you don't know what the questions are going to be. And you have to just be ready for anything. And you have to be comfortable with that uncertainty. And I think that's an extremely important mindset to have, especially with all of the ever-changing things that are occurring with AI and advancements in general. So my hot take is really that if we don't give the students that opportunity to really explore the content on their own, they're not going to learn it in a way that years later they're going to be able to recall it and share it with others.
So it's like, okay, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm modeling all of these things. I'm thinking that because people are taking notes, that they're, answering questions, that is engagement. But what I'm hearing from you is saying that, no, there's got to be struggle involved in that. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty. Our students can make all the wrong mistakes, have all the misconceptions. That is part of learning. And I love that. And I think sometimes too, teachers are maybe nervous about time, right? Like, oh, but I don't have time for my students to make mistakes. I have to get this right here, right now, because we have a test or we have this thing that students need to do already. So what do you say about that? Like the comments of like time, right? Because that is real. Like, we really don't have time, but we need to make time for our students to struggle. And I think in the math world too, one of the phrases that's my favorite is that productive struggle, right? We really, really, we meaning all teachers, we are not great at providing spaces for students to productively struggle.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that up, because actually the first time I ever heard the phrase productive struggle was when I learned about creating instructional videos as an undergraduate. And I always wanted to provide students with that productive struggle in real time. And again, as you mentioned, the rooms, you walk in, the students, it's quiet, they're talking, the classroom looks neat, but without that struggle, they're not generating their own understanding, and it inevitably will impact them negatively. We're trying to help students realize their own potential here and realize that they are responsible for their learning, and they are responsible for saying, okay, I understood the beginning of that task. As we got further and further in, though, I really needed some support. So when I do my homework, I'm going to focus on those homework problems that relate to that concept. Whereas the ones earlier, I might not need as much practice with. And that's actually one of the concepts that Dr. Lillidahl emphasizes in his book on how homework is meant to be a learning task for students. And inevitably, we're training students in this compliance piece that the thinking model helps move students away from.
It's such a great reminder too, Joey, right? That like sometimes as teachers, we just already assume, oh, the kids are not going to get this. We don't have time for this. And then when we actually release it and when we try it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, y'all got this down in 10 minutes? Oh, you proved me wrong.
I knew I needed to find a way to bring this inquiry to my classroom. And so Modern Classrooms offered this workshop on inquiry-based learning where we learned about the 5E model. And what it did so nicely was focused on the engage and explore component of those 5 E's. And it talked about different ways we can engage students using hooks, different problems we can pose at the beginning of a unit. It then segued into an exploration piece, which looks different. Of course, in every discipline, it might be an investigation. It might be providing students a set of questions to work through. What I found so nicely was that the engage and explore piece were really emphasized in this workshop. And then I thought, well, we don't have a lot of time left in the workshop. We still have the 3 remaining ones. And they said, no, actually, that's already there. So in a modern classroom lesson, at the heart of it, the 3 components are the instructional video, individual practice, and mastery check. If you do the workshop, you learn them backwards. But my point is, the explain component is shared through the instructional video. The elaborate component is shared through the individual practice, and the mastery check is shared through the evaluate component. And I found that a building thinking classroom task does a really good job of emphasizing the engage and explore piece of every lesson or sequence of lessons. And it opened my eyes to ways that I could better prepare my students for a sequence of modern classroom lessons. What I inevitably found was that there was less of a need for the intervention component at the end. Students used the instructional video to expand their understanding. They refined it with the practice, and they just used the mastery check as one extra practice problem. It was no longer this, I have to take a mastery check, I want to avoid the mastery check. It was very like, okay, I'm going to do one extra problem, we're moving on from this entire lesson. And that I found helped me save so much time because I didn't have to provide as much intervention along the way. It allowed students to appreciate the use of the BTC tasks, and it really allowed them to understand the process of learning a concept, especially in a mathematics class.
Thank you so much for listening. Listeners, remember you can always email us at podcast@modernclassrooms.org, and you can find the links to topics and tools we discussed, as well as more info on this week's announcements and events, in the show notes for this episode at podcast.modernclassrooms.org. We'll have this episode's recap and transcript uploaded to the Modern Classrooms blog on Friday, so be sure to check there or check back in the show notes for this episode if you'd like to access those. And if you enjoy our podcast and it's been helpful in supporting you to create a blended, self-paced, mastery-based learning environment, we would love if you could leave a review. That does help other folks find our podcast. And of course, you can always learn the essentials of our model, if you want to go beyond the podcast, through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. And you can follow us on social media at modernclassproj. That's PROJ. We are so appreciative of all the hard work you do for students and schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.